get to welcome everyone back after the Chagim.
Sorry.
I hope Alan has everyone's email update if there's anything that ever comes up. Paul, okay. So Paul has everyone's email if there's ever a need to update regarding the shir if something does come up, so Paul could inform everyone about it. But for now, we are very thankful to everyone for being back. Today's special shir is sponsored by Susan Jerkowitz. It's to commemorate the yahrzeit of her father, Yosef and Shmuel. So we do thank you for sponsoring. The neshama should have an aliyah. And we're doing Parshat Noach. Parshat Noach, page 30. Page 30 in the Art Scroll. Now, Noach is positioned in the Torah between the portion of creation, which we read on Shabbos, and Lech Lecha, which introduces Avraham Avinu. The interesting thing about Noach is that you could look at him as some kind of continuation of Adam, continuation of Adam. Adam is the father of humanity. Noah is also the father of humanity in this new world that was created. And the relationship between the two is obvious. In other words, if you want to identify the proper ethics for the human race, so you turn to the 7 Noachite laws, Sheva Mitzvos B'nei Noach. It is well known that the Lubavitcher Rebbe pushed that people should be familiar, that the nations of the world should be familiar with the Noachite law. He even got in 1991 the Congress to sign something that it's at least in the books, that it's recognized as the ethical way of living these Noachite laws. But Maimonides, when he tells us about these Noachite laws, he notes that Adam Harishon was already commanded 6 of them. Noach got the 7th. So we call them the 7 Noachite laws, because they turned into 7 with Noah. But really 6 of them are from Adam, indicating that this individual, this Noach here, is some kind of continuation. He is, again, the father of a new world. Which one was added in the days of Noah? Which one's a newer commandment? So one of the Noachite laws is what we call Ever Min Hachai, the prohibition of eating a limb from a living animal. You don't yank off a limb from a chicken, even if you are in desperate needs, even if you are in the United States of America on a Sunday afternoon somewhere in Arkansas. And you know that people are coming for the ball game, and you know that you don't have enough chicken wings, so your chicken wings should not be ripped off from your chicken, but rather you have to first kill it, right? And then you could go ahead and have your chicken wing, because a chicken wing ripped off while the animal is alive is a limb removed from a living being that is very cruel. And by the way, this obviously teaches humanity that we have a responsibility to animals as well, and there is a concept of ethical treatment of animals within Judaism. It's not a whole religion, right? If you join Pita, that is a religion. There's a difference between a concept which is true and taking it overboard and making it into the whole essence of your identity. But the concept of treating animals in an ethical way, indeed, is what is required, obviously, from us, but even from the human race. So this is the 7th of these Noachite laws, and that was the one that was specifically given to Noach. Now, why was Adam not told about this concept, if it is indeed true? So Maimonides would tell you that Adam and his descendants, up until Noah, were actually prohibited from eating any animal. Right? They were vegetarians. It was considered unethical to even eat an animal. It seems like that difference between human and animal does not appear until later. and therefore there is a prohibition that appears at that time. So you cannot tell a person that it is prohibited to remove the limb when the whole entity itself is actually prohibited. So that's why that only appears in the days of Noah. Now, why does the Almighty decide that, you know what? Let's start allowing the consumption of meat, right? What was it that pushed the Almighty in that direction? Was it a lawsuit from Burger King and McDonald's? Obviously not. Well, some commentators explain that when a human not eating meat has in it some merit, right? This is an interesting thing to start talking about right after Yom Tov, right? Like not eating meat for in ethical understanding has some merit, and when it comes to health, that's a different discussion. We can have some people getting up here in shul one day, perhaps addressing it. But the concept has in it merit. But at the same time, there's a great danger when you go ahead and view animals as beings that suffer and animals that have emotions and feelings. So there could be something good that comes out of it, that you are sensitive to their welfare and you are involved in taking care of them in a proper way. That's good. But at the same time, there could be a dark side or a negative side to such an attitude, because it might lead you to saying to yourself, you know what, we are no different than animals. And if animals could go ahead and you don't find loyalty among animals, right? You don't find the baboon in the zoo saying, you know what, this is my mate. We've been together already, for 12 months. I'm not going to go ahead and take care of my needs with the other baboon. You're not going to find that in the zoo. So when humans see themselves as part of the animal kingdom and do not understand that there is something that separates us, which is ethics, natural law, or commandments from above, the danger is that we start acting like animals. And this is what happened in the generation of the flood. In the generation of the flood, that gap there was lacking. They viewed themselves as part of the animal kingdom. They acted like animals. Animals, if there is a desire, you do whatever you want. You become, and therefore, by the way, when you want to point out that a person is not acting in an ethical way, right? You say he's a behemoth. You've used that term, right? Harvey Weinstein, he's in the news, right? Unfortunately, with the Yiddish nomen, right? We're not very proud of it, but from what I understand, and again, I don't want to talk Lashon, I don't know him personally, but he seems to be like a behemoth. Why? He has a desire in a specific weakness that, as my father would call it, a schwachkeit, that men have, a weakness that sometimes develops within men when they don't control it, and you become like a behemoth. You're an animal. You do what you want. This is a problem. If you view yourself as an animal, and that could be the byproduct of sensing that they have feelings, well, we're no different than them, you could act like them. Something that actually could prevent us from going down that path and recognizing that there is a difference between us is having it for lunch. In other words, when you sit down and you have a fleishik meal, right, you should think for a minute, how can I eat a being, an entity that has feelings and emotions, right? How can I go ahead and consume, right, yada, shor konehu, there is an understanding. How can I do that? This is wrong, right? The ox does have feelings. How can I consume it? The answer is that there's something that I have, which is understanding, right? I know wrong from right. So I could eat this piece of meat only when I have an understanding that I have an ethical responsibility, right? I know that there are things that God wants me to do, He wants me not to do. I have to be a decent person. I can't be a behemoth and eat a behemoth at the same time. This is what it's all about. And therefore the Talmud tells us that for an am haaretz, asur le'echol basar, that for a person that is lacking any values, you know what? You're no different than what appears in your plate. So simply you cannot and should not be eating it. So this is what's occurring in this new... Yes?
How do you justify it to someone who is a vegan or a vegetarian?
So how do I justify the consumption of meat at all? In other words, my ethics come from Torah. So obviously I start off with an understanding that the Torah allows it, right? And it's a discussion we could have if, what is the Jewish attitude towards becoming a vegetarian. I think there is a positive side there, as mentioned. There is a positive side of being a vegetarian because it indicates sensitivity. There's that dangerous aspect because you don't see the difference. I justify it because due to the fact that I have ethics, there is something that separates me from the animal. And it was given to me, the animal was given to me to use, and this is a proper usage. Obviously, it's a much broader, the question is much more loaded than the simple answer that we are presenting here. But I think at least what we do have is an understanding why in the days of Noah, where there was a need for that message, where there was a need for the people to understand, there is a great flaw when you see yourself as part of an animal kingdom. They are allowed to eat meat, but they have to still be ethical. Right, and you have to figure out how the chickens are treated before you shech them. Right, there's a whole Parshas to do every year. I don't know if you follow that. And every single year, these communities where they believe that Parshas is some kind of great mitzvah, so they bring them in carts upon carts, and these animals are not fed enough and not taken care of, and it's a very, very significant problem. So the concept of Ever Minachai is to remind us that yes, you are allowed to consume, but do it in a sensitive way, do it in a proper way, right? Limit the consumption, perhaps, anyway not so healthy, right? Enjoy your salmon more. Like, these are things that you take into consideration. So you have that balance here. Yes, it is permissible, and as a result, know that there is a difference, but at the same time, there is a place for ethics. Yes? Uh-oh, what did I open up here? Yeah.
No, so in the days of Adam, where eating meat was not...
right.
Why was Hevel's sacrifice more desirous to Hashem, Hevel's who brought actually animals, as opposed
from the animals,
as opposed to Cain who brought meal offering or whatever.
Well, so first of all, it was from the animals, but not animals themselves, right? I mean, that Smyrna was from the wool, so it was not an actual animal. And it really had to do with the person and not so much with what was being offered. In other words, it has to do with the fact of attitude. Cain believed that we exist in this world to acquire things, right? To have kinyan. And Hevel was a flawed individual as well, but he saw emptiness. He saw Hevel. The word Hevel is like the same word that's used for steam or emptiness. Kohelet, the book we read on Sukkot. Havel Havalim. Everything is futility. There's no significance in anything. That was the Hevel attitude. It's a flawed attitude as well, because there is significance in the world, but it is one that is less destructive than the kind. So that's a voracious Dvar Torah. But at least we introduce a little bit of understanding where Noah is walking into the picture. Yes?
How do you justify slugging Kapporis?
I can't, but that's a different thing. Put it this way. If I live in the shtetl, right, in the 16th century, right, and I live in a little village near Krakow, and there are chickens everywhere, and that is going to be anyway my lunch, right? And I want to go ahead and have a reminder that this is a very significant day, Yom Kippur, and my life and what's going to occur in the next year is going to be determined. So I take a chicken, and I want to remind myself that who knows what will happen this year. I take the chicken, and I say, whatever happens upon me, God Almighty, let it happen to the chicken. And you take the chicken, it's not swinging by its legs, and it could be done in a very proper way. I have no problem for Kapporis in the 16th century Krakow. If it was done, okay? However, you realize, he's anyway in my backyard. He even hasn't named the chicken, right? I'll play with him most probably before eventually he makes his way onto the plate. So the idea that I take it and I say a few words and make it go around my head a few times, I give my stamp of approval for it. However, when I move forward into the 21st century, when most people, even though there might be some bylaws that will be allowing chicken in the city of Toronto in some backyards, right? So we're going back to shtetl days. But until then, to bring it in a cart, right? And the issues that exist with transportation, and then in an era where you have people and with the media there coming and taking pictures of us, those who are teaching ethics, mistreating animals, is extremely problematic. And I do kaparas, but I do with entities called money, right? Money, kesef. Kesef had never had an issue with being having the discomfort, and it is highly recommended. I would not allow, obviously they wouldn't ask me, my kids, but I would not allow them to do kaparas with chickens. I believe that should not be done. And this is not from me. I mean, I heard about great people like Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, who was a great posek in Yerushalayim. In the early days, as a child, he did it with chickens because, again, you're in, Israel or in Palestine of 1920s. You have chickens running around. But then eventually, in the Israel of the 1990s, he would not do it with chickens. He would do it with money. So great Torah scholars recognize, obviously, if you come from a Hasidic background, so there's holiness to what you've seen in the past, and it's very, very hard to change those holy practices, because while for me, right, as my type of Judaism, the highlight or the peak of Judaism occurred 3,400 years ago at Mount Sinai. So I try to work and I try to tap into that era. If you're a Hasidic Jew, the peak of Judaism occurred between the year 1700 and 1760 in eastern Poland, where the Baal Shem Tov walked the ground. So therefore, there is holiness to the Carpathian Mountains and to Mezhibuzh, to these villages. So it's a different attitude. Therefore, the language we're going to have is a very different language. I have no problem changing the garb from 18th century Eastern Europe. I have no problem changing some customs from 18th century Eastern Europe if I recognize that for the New World it's not good for Judaism. They will not. So that's where there is a significant difference. Now, are we good with that? Okay. So now, one day, I really want to talk about pets and the Jewish. With all due respect, and at yard site of Ketzel yesterday, if I'm not mistaken,
Motzei Yom Kippur.
It was Motzei Yom Kippur. Motzei Yom Kippur was the yard site of your cat. I remember. If it has one, So now, that's for some other time. But now we had Noah and linking him to Abraham. At the end of this week's portion in the story that you are very familiar with the Babylonian with the Babylonian tower. You remember the story of Migdal Bavel. People come together, they unite, they build a furnace. Oral tradition tells us that this furnace that they use to create bricks is actually the furnace that Midrashim tell us they throw Avraham Avinu into. What these Midrashim are telling us is that the world united at the end of Parashat Noach, when there is this gathering around Nimrod, and they build this tower. There is unity among the nations, but there is a problem when you have unity among the nations without Avraham and his teachings in the midst of such a unified gathering. You will bring about destruction, and their mission will be to uproot the teachings of God and uproot the message of Abraham and his children, or as you mentioned, the United Nations. Any gathering of the nations that is without the teachings of Avraham will be destructive, and this is what is being told there. They want to uproot Avraham. This is what's occurring. Therefore, it's really an introduction to Avraham Avinu. Judaism wants unity, but it has to be unity that is based on Avraham. I teach a few hours a week in Chat. Now, Chat had a merger this past summer, where the North Campus made its way to the South Campus, and they joined forces. And if I would be writing a paper on sociology and about students, there is great material to go ahead and see what happens to a group of 11th graders that suddenly have to deal not just with one new student that comes to class, but rather when you have a unified group that comes in. It's very interesting, and it's a pity that there's no one, the school can make some money out of selling the rights to some university to come in and study the interactions. Interesting it is. Now, what happens is, in general, when you walk in as a teacher to an 11th grade, and even if they are wonderful kids, which Chat does have, and even if they are very mature kids and smart kids, 11th grade, these are kids with personalities, and they are teenagers. They are not 9th graders that come into class with a level of fear of the unknown. By 11th grade, they know it all, and they know that entertainment you could get in the classroom as well. And it's a unified group, but what are they unified in? It's against, in some ways, and you have to manage it well, and you have to be wise how to deal with it, the teacher. Yeah? Now, what happens now is I walk into an 11th grade this year, and there are two groups. It's very different, right? There's no unity, and now suddenly you become, and you have that opportunity to turn to a student from the North Campus and say, oh, you want to review the material we covered? You could sit next to that student. Do you know one another? I know them now. Well, you can, and you become the one that's bringing them together, and it's a much healthier environment in some ways, because you become that unifying force. That's how I see Avraham. Now, in no way am I comparing in 11th grade to Migdal Bavel, to the Tower of Babylonia, but the concept of when you have the teacher bringing the unity to class, that is a very healthy environment. On the other hand, when there is a unity that is trying to reject the teacher, that could create some significant problems. That is all what occurring. That is what is occurring at the end of Parashat Noach. But we really have to start now. It's about time to start Parashat Noach with all those introductions, and we're going to focus on one word really. And I'm going to share with you, to make up for what I said earlier, a little bit of a Hasidic thought. How does that sound? I'm sure in Toronto especially, it's a city that has a lot of Hasidic roots, so I have to be very careful, of which I'm not. So therefore, I will start off with a nice Hasidic word, which I think personally is beautiful. Okay, so we're going to make up and satisfy everyone here. So now, Noach is told to build the teva, to build the ark. Why is there a need for an ark? Listen, the world's going to be destroyed. We are going to create a new world. Noah has to survive. So therefore, he tells him in verse 14. Let's read verse 14. Aseh lecha. So this is on page 30. Aseh lecha. Make for yourself teva, the ark of Atzei Gopher, of Atzei Gopher. So you really want to know what gopher wood is. So you're going to turn right now to your English, and please give me the translation of gopher wood.
Gopher wood.
Thank you so much. Gopher wood, okay? So some say that it is cypress wood. Cypress wood. And it's not so far-fetched, because let's take the key three letters in gopher. Ga, pa, ar, right? Gopher, cypress wood. We're good with that? And actually, if you go ahead and you have an expertise in the field, which I do not have, in older woods and newer woods, right? There are woods that they could look at the makeup of the wood and see that it goes back, what they call millions of years. A different discussion, which obviously I'm not going to go through now. When you ask the age of the universe, right? Is it 5,778 or 13.7 billion? A little discrepancy there, right? The age of the universe, how we deal with it, different discussion. But there is no question that cypress wood is a very old wood. So here we have it. We have our Atzei Gopher. Why is it chosen? You have to remember again, this is a world that it needs, unfortunately, to be recreated. It's recreated by destroying it. Similar to Sodom. When Sodom was destroyed, what came down from heaven? Gofrit v'melach. Gofrit, right? Brimstone, fire and brimstone, right? Brimstone. Gofrit, the same word. So there is some symbolism here that relates to this idea of destruction that will occur to the world. Next we are told, Kinim ta'aseh et ha'teva. You should have compartments. So number one is that they have to keep people on one level, animals on a different level, waste on one level. So this is telling him how to create this ark. It also, perhaps, according to some, this is symbolic to the new world that will be created, that there has to be different regions, that people should settle in different regions and develop in different ways, because if you have everyone together, you could have the problems of old reoccurring. So there should be different compartments. And you should go ahead and place the pitch inside and outside it. Fine. Dimensions are given. We have the dimensions here. And then in verse, where am I holding? 16. And this is what I want to focus on. You should have for the ark a Zohar ta'aseh lateva. Your ark must have some kind of Zohar. What is it, Zohar? So Zohar relates to the word Saharaim, midday. So there has, just as midday is a time of light, so too your ark should have a source of light. What kind of source of light? So midrashic sources say that there was some kind of precious stone that provided the light. But if you want to work with the most basic understanding, there should be a window. Zohar ta'aseh lateva. And so we're going to focus a little bit on the tzara. There's a drasha, an old traditional drasha that the rabbi gives in synagogue with the word Zohar. And he notes that when you come to shul, right, and you have to sit there for 3 hours, for some, the experience could be like sitting in jail. Right? For some, right? They go meshuggah there, it's very long. For others, this is a time when they feel illuminated. They feel like that this is an experience that really illuminates their day, their week, and it gives great zohar, right? Zohar harakia, like a shine. So the word zohar relates to both. So you're in a teva for a year. It could be, zohar could be similar to zohar, but it could also be similar to sohar, like bet hasor, to a jail. Okay, that's one drush that is given. But I'm going to share with you, focusing on this word that appears here, that really is describing Noach, because Noach is that light that is in a teva, and he is in some ways like that sohar. So we're going to go ahead and give insight into the word sohar as it relates to Noach himself. Okay, because sohar, you will be like that sohar in the teva itself. So here we go. So I'm going to be sharing with you an insight from a Rebbe from Radomsk. I know Toronto has a lot of Radomsk people. So there was a Rebbe in Radomsk. His name was Reb Shlomo Rabinowitz, and I think 19th century. And he gives us the following insight. Now, when we have difficulties in our life, right, challenges, minor ones, we hope only, we understand that we try to use it as an opportunity to relate to the higher being, to relate to God, to turn to Him, to pray to Him, to recognize that perhaps it's an opportunity to become better people. We know very well that to become better, you need guidance. In other words, a person could decide that I will become better, so he will devote his life to saving stray dogs in Costa Rica. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but if you have the ability to help people in difficult times, right? If you have the ability and the tools to teach values to people that give them purpose in life, right? If you could become a Torah educator and you do go ahead and do something which is not insignificant, but you could do much more, it's a pity, it's a loss. Right? It's like the person that can make a donation to a synagogue of $20,000 and they make $200, right? Paul Foreman will be on their case, right? You could give a significant donation. Why are you doing so? The same exists with our essence, with our being. A person has to assess what contribution can I make? And it is not in no way to minimize a $200 donation, but if you could give $20,000, give the $20,000. If you could go ahead and have a significant impact, don't go ahead and deal just with stray dogs in South America. This is what we understand. So we need to go to a teacher, because someone that has learned from experience, has tradition. So the teacher, or the tzaddik, the righteous person, plays a very significant role in our spiritual development. Now, from where I come from, right, if my rational Judaism, which has obviously its flaws, where I come from, I go to the righteous person just for information, right? Teach me, show me tradition. It's, in other words, I'm not going to believe in you as I believe in a God, right? But rather, you are more educated than me. So just in any other field, if I have a challenge in a specific field, I will turn to the expert in that field. The tzaddik becomes my expert. But if I'm in a Hasidic environment, and this will give you an understanding into the concept of a tish. Have you ever seen footage of a Hasidic tish, right? And you see a Rebbe there sitting, and he's giving out apples, or throwing apples in some cases, they do it. And the Hasidim go ahead, and they run, and they grab the food, and they are very excited about it. I still remember a Friday night.
The man.
What was that?
He said, just the man.
Just the man. Correct. And that is also a correct statement. So I remember still as a child, we lived in Jerusalem in a neighborhood called Arzei Habira. I'm 11 years old. And we had a guest from the United States. And after the meal, he says to my father, I want to go ahead to visit the Tishin. I want to make my way to Mea Sharm to a Tish. So we go ahead, and for me it was an experience. So we went to this Toldos Aaron, some Hasidic Tish. And we come in, and this is after a long meal. And they ask, when's the Rebbe coming in? They said, he'll be here soon. Right? He's still finishing Mincha, Erev Shabbos probably, or something like that. So he'll be here soon. Eventually the Rebbe shows up, and the Hasidim are there. And I still remember that after he cut the challah, I was handed a piece. I don't know how many hands touched it, but eventually I did get a piece of challah there from a Rebbe. So I don't have it anymore, no.
Shirayim.
Shirayim, the Shirayim from the Rebbe. Shirayim from the Rebbe has its significance. Where does that come from? So this is taking this idea of the tzaddik, where I'm limited to information or perhaps inspiration. For them, they see something divine in it, because the tzaddik is supposed to guide you, but just being in contact with him, or even eating something that was designated for him, becomes elevated. So therefore, I am eating elevated food. It's like eating from a korban a little bit, because it was designated for this righteous person who is having an impact on the world. So the tzaddik indeed has this significant impact on the world. Where is their agreement? Tzaddik is important. The tzaddik is important. Now, whenever you look at Parshat Noach and you're going to start looking at Divrei Torah, we have our class earlier in the week, right? So we have an opportunity of a whole week to look at different insights that you will make their appearance in bulletins and flyers given out in shul or online. I guarantee that over the next few days, up until Shabbat, you will find somewhere or someone that is going to be comparing and contrasting Noach to Avraham. We have this need to do it. That poor Noach, right, gets one weekly portion, when starting next week we focus on the people of Israel from Lech Lecha until Vezot HaBracha. That's it. We take over, right? We don't give the platform to humanity. The one weekly portion that in essence gives a platform to humanity. Last week was a platform to planet Earth and to the universe. This week is to humanity. What do we have to do, we Jews? We immediately bring in Avraham Avinu. Now, there must be a reason for it. The rabbis must do it because they believe that it's important for our education. And it seems to be that even though Noah is a tzaddik, righteous person, tamim, a perfect person in his generation, there is something that is unsettling for the educator. There's something we don't want to be like Noah. Yes, he was righteous, but there's something about him that we are being told, please avoid that behavior. And what is it specifically? So let's go to Avram, being informed that Sodom is being destroyed. What does he do? He prays for the welfare of Sodom. When you think about the tent, and this is next week's portion, right? When children are going to be coming home from school with their arts and crafts that have to remain on the refrigerator for some time, what you will see is the tent of Abraham. What was it about the tent of Abraham that was unique, that became part of the arts and crafts of the first grade teacher? Open from all sides. What does that symbolize? It symbolizes the idea that he is not living in a closed home. It's open. And it's open from all directions because there's no expectation that to walk in the tent of Abraham, you come in specifically from the east or the west or the north. Wherever you are coming from, you are welcome. Because his mission is, he is the tzaddik that wants to be in the middle of people. Right? He wants to have an impact by interacting with them. You talk about, the tremendous respect we have for Chabad. That is what they do. You think about places that I have no interest in visiting, Bombay, right? Or Thailand. I don't want to go, right? Even if there would be a shul mission, I would find a way of getting. I have no interest in going there, and I respect. I'm sure, I respect David Wolf, and I respect everyone else here for going to Vietnam and other places. But personally, it doesn't excite me. And then I hear about people that don't just go visit; they live there, and the loneliness that they experience, and at the same time, why are they doing it? To welcome people, right? They're shlichim, they're messengers of the Rebbe. That is very inspiring. And in many ways, that is taking that attribute of Avraham Avinu, and they welcome people there. They welcome Israelis. They welcome those who just ended the army and they need to escape. So they want to escape everything, and where do they land up? To what they call the most inspiring experience, which is their Seder in Nepal. Why? That is what Chabad does. They have their tent open. They are the tzaddikim that put themselves in the middle of everything. That is what they do. That's Avraham Avinu. Noach, on the other hand, is a tzaddik. But where does he remain as tzaddik? He's the leader, right? He's the leader of things. That is the type of tzaddik of Noach. So if he is told, the world's a terrible place, it's time to protect yourself from the world. Okay, perfect. I'll build the teva. You want me to build the teva? He starts. Can you imagine Avraham Avinu if he would be told, you want to destroy the world? Maybe there's some righteous people there. Avraham Avinu was the negotiator, right? If there are a few righteous people that have perhaps the potential of changing the world, let's talk, God. I'm not just going into that teva. That's the difference between the two. And that's why when we read about Noach making his way into the Teva, and we are inspired by him, and we recognize his greatness, we do not want him to become the symbol of what you are supposed to be, a person who puts yourself in an ark and separates yourself from the world. That is why we walk into this portion, and that's why you will be seeing Divrei Torah that contrast. Not to take away from him, but to be sure that we get the message. Be like Avraham. Be the tzaddik in the middle. Okay? That's piece of information number one. So far, so good. Now, when we have difficulty in life, in challenge, we have a tzara. There's a tzara. So you want to improve. You want to change things. You want to become a better person. So as mentioned, I turn to the tzaddik. You turn to the tzaddik. And we hope that through the tzaddik, we could change things. We could turn things around. You hear this idea? There's a tzara lo aleinu. There's a difficulty. There's a situation that we need assistance. We have fast days. The fast days are not just days where we try to figure out how to get over the day, but it's a time to reflect. To think that, yes, there are still things that are not the way they should be in the world we live in. And we want to improve. That's a tzara. And there's a prayer, on a fast day, on Mincha, there's a prayer that we say in Shema Koleinu, that the main theme of that prayer is tzara. Anenu Hashem, rings a bell, right? So again, it's a fast day, a day when we are not just remembering events from the past, but we are identifying in this day and age areas where there are things that shouldn't be the way they are. We turn to the Almighty, we want to self-improve, we want to go ahead and change our path, we want to be inspired by the tzaddik. So we say, Anenu Hashem, Anenu biyom tzom tanisenu, ki b'tzara, we are in a tzara. And then we turn to God, you are oneh be'et tzara. Tzara, that is the key word. So we end the blessing about tzara, and then the next blessing, the Shmona Esrei, starts with the word retzeh. So tzara turns to retzeh. Comes the Radomsk Rebbe, and he says the following. We want the tzara to turn around. We want things to turn around. How do you turn things around? When the tzaddik takes himself and does not remain just in the front or in the top or in the beginning, but places himself in the middle. That is what is desirable to God. And that is what changes a tzara to retzeh. So if you take the word tzara, tzadi, reish, hey, You want to change the tzara? Take the tzaddik. He should not just be separated from everyone else. Put himself in the middle of the two letters that remain. So tzadi, resh, hey. Take the tzadi, put it in between the resh and the hey. What do you get? Ritzeh. That's what the fast day is all about. He turns things around by putting himself in the middle. Beautiful, beautiful insight there. So something to think about. It's a fast day. Turn guidance. Guidance does not always have to be from an actual person. It could be from text. It could be from a book. It could be from a halachic text of Jewish thought, text that talks about the importance of prayer, of kindness, of chesed. Take the teachings of the tzaddik and put it in the middle. You will change a tzara to ritzeh. However, Noach, unfortunately, he is a tzaddik. But he is a tzaddik that always remains in the front. And he could turn things around, by the way. He did turn things around. He created a new world. Give him credit. There was a corrupt world. He remained righteous. He did turn things around, but he did not turn things around the way we wanted. He didn't turn things around into a ritzeh, but he took a tzara. He took the tzara that existed, says the Radomsker Rebbe. He took the tzara that existed. He turned things around, but he remained in front. He remained the tzaddik in the beginning. But he took the tzara and turned around the resh and the hey, and what did he create? Tzadi hey resh, the tzohar. And therefore the Radomsk Rebbe says that if you look in the beginning of verse 16, and we are told, Tzohar taseh lateva, you are this tzohar, that is what Noach is all about. That is what's all about. Yes, he turned things around. He turned around the resh and the hey, but he's still only a tzohar. He did not turn into ritzeh, and therefore he's not the father of the people of Israel that have that mission to become educators to humanity, to become in the midst of the people. This is what we are told. Now, when it comes to Hasidic thought, there are times that Hasidic thought, with such readings, introduce concepts which are foreign. So when I have mechanism that is foreign and a teaching that is foreign, it doesn't settle well with me. But this is a beautiful insight because it is a concept that is 100% true, and it's a reading into our prayers and into the role of the tzaddik, which can inspire all of us. So hopefully, this magnificent insight speaks to you as well, and hopefully it makes up for some earlier statements that I said, that for me, the 18th century is not the century that illuminated humanity, but nevertheless we are hopefully inspired by it and by Avraham Avinu, and at the same time I hope we give enough credit to Noah. He is a righteous person, he did great things, right? Hopefully humanity can be inspired by him as well. I thank you all for coming. Thank you again to our sponsors, to Susan, and everyone have a wonderful day.